quoted words. I have always said that I will be a president for all Ghanaians, whether they voted for me or not, and without consideration for which part of the country they come from. It was not political rhetoric. It was a governing philosophy that shaped every aspect of his administration. We also understood that Ghana's diversity, ethnic, regional, religious, gender, and generational, was a source of strength, not division. But only if that diversity was properly harnessed and included in the governance process. Of President, and asked him that, you people went to do ABC? And he said, yes. Prof said, let me advise you. Go quickly to the student who was disciplined and go and beg and make peace. Because I know it was a prank that went too far, but if it goes to court, you guys can be in a lot of trouble. The guy quickly sneaks there. He didn't even tell Prof that he was also the chief choir master. And he went and he apologized and made peace, and that's how the matter died. So most litigation lawyers would know that this is not the path to making money, but that was Prof. But Prof's character was also shaped.
Madam Anansi. Now, and maybe one fact that said, now, yeah, things were not easy. We had a lot of difficulties, but we have come this far. Look, there is a lot that we can show Ghanaians that we have done for them. Along the way, we have had to make sacrifices, and many of you here have felt the force of the sacrifices that we have made. But I want to assure you that the next 4 years are going to be better. The next 4 years are going to see our dreams fulfilled, because we have been able to remove the impediments.
Legacy of President John Atta Mills, a man of principle, peace, and public purpose. It is only fitting that we welcome a speaker who embodies many of the same virtues that defined his leadership. Mrs. Charlotte Osei is a lawyer by training and a public servant by calling. She holds degrees in law from the University of Ghana, an LLM from Queen's University in Canada, and a master's in business leadership from University of South Africa, Pretoria. She made history in 2015 when she was appointed as chairperson of the Electoral Commission of Ghana, becoming the first woman to hold that office. In that role, she supervised one of the most pivotal elections in our recent history, upholding democratic principles under immense national and international scrutiny. It was called one of the world's best elections by international observers. Before that, she served as the first female chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education.
We honor today. My name is Charlotte Osei, and I have the extraordinary privilege of being taught commercial law by Dr. Mills, as he was, at the University of Ghana, Lagos, and later company law at the Ghana School of Law. More significantly, in 2011, he appointed me as chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, making me the first woman to hold that position in Ghana's history. Today, I speak as a mentee, reflecting on the profound impact of a teacher who saw potential where others saw youth, who offered opportunity where others saw inexperience, and who built bridges where others saw divisions. The theme for this year's memorial lecture is Atta Mills, a case study for the Fourth Republic. I will be approaching this theme through three lenses. I will look at Prof as a man, Prof as a teacher, and Prof as a president. And then I'll share the reflections of a mentee. It's important to look at Prof's character because his character defined everything he achieved, and his character is the reason why we're honoring him today. Prof was born on 21st July 1944 in Takwa, Western Region, and he tragically passed away on July 24, 2012, just 3 days after his 68th birthday. But in those 68 years, Prof lived a life that exemplified the highest ideals of scholarship, public service, and human dignity. He was a Mercy Dawson Anwar. Young Fifi was a second child and the first son among 7 siblings. From his father, we learn that he inherited a lot of learning and teaching, and from his mother, he gained the gentle strength that would characterize his leadership style. His educational journey, as we've been told, took him from Honey Valley Methodist Primary School to Commander Methodist Middle School, and then to Achimota School, advanced level certificates in 1961 and 1963. At the University of Ghana, he completed his Bachelor of Law degree and Professional Law certificate in 1967. Mills's pursuit of higher education in 1968, and then to the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, where he earned his PhD in law in 1971 at the remarkably young age of 27. His selection as a Fulbright scholar to Stanford Law School in 1971 was not merely an academic achievement. It was a testament to Prof's character and potential. The Fulbright program chose him not just for his intellectual capabilities, but for his potential to be a bridge builder and a leader. At Stanford, his colleagues remember him as someone who listened more than he spoke, who asked thoughtful questions, and who approached every challenge with both intellectual rigor and human compassion. He was, in the words of one Stanford professor, a scholar gentleman in the truest sense of the term. Perhaps no quality defined Mills the man more than his humility. In a continent where political leaders are often known for high-handed approaches to power, Mills remained remarkably grounded throughout his life and presidency. His humility was not weakness, it was strength under control. This humility was evident in his famous declaration that I have always said that I will be president for all Ghanaians, whether they voted for me or not, and without consideration for which part of the country they come from. These were not mere campaign promises. They were the words of a man who truly understood that leadership is service and not privilege. His approach to leadership emboldened me personally on 2 occasions to tell him, while he was president, that I thought a decision he took was wrong, and in another case, the decision was unfair because he had not listened to the other party. Typical of Prof, he took the criticism very calmly. We argued as lawyers, and he told me, when you're president, you see things very differently. Eventually, in one of the matters, months later, I got a message from him. He said, you were right and I was wrong. That was an emotional moment for me and a great lesson in leadership. And I did learn that power that fears criticism is already bankrupt. In an era when political integrity often seemed like an oxymoron, Mills stood as a beacon of moral leadership. His integrity was not situational, it was absolute. As Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, current president of Nigeria, best captured this aspect of Prof in his tribute when Prof died. He said, President Atta Mills was a man with a profound, comprehensive intellect. Unlike many individuals whose public courage as the private and public morals, and there was no seam dividing the public official from the private man. He was guided by a moral compass that did not waver according to the circumstances. Already. Interesting story from first year. We had decided to go to London over the summer holidays to job. My first challenge, of course, was getting a visa. I went for the visa interview, and the official interviewee asked me what I was going to do in London for 3 months. I told him I was going to see the sights. And he said, "You're a law student." I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay. Can I advise you?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Before you become a lawyer, make sure you become a better liar." I said, "Thank you." I got my visa, and with my roommates, we went off to London to job. Then the university reopened, and we were late. I managed to get into Ghana before my 2 roommates, and I managed to get myself registered for second year. My 2 roommates came back, and they were told by the dean that they had been deferred for 1 year. One of my roommates, Irama, was actually a niece of Professor Mills, who was vice dean. So we figured, go to Prop's home, go and plead, and of course, if blood mixed, everybody else can sneak through. So Irama goes to Mills's house that evening and comes back to our room, very, very angry. He said, "What did Prof say?" "Oh, Prof said, it's only 1 year." It doesn't matter. You can study French or computer during that 1 year. So, at that point, everybody else knew that there was no hope. Around us spent the year studying French. So we knew that his approach to corruption was uncompromising. So when he said, "I would not spare any government official, be it past or present, who would be found guilty of embezzling state funds," it was not political rhetoric, it was a moral conviction that guided his administration. Prof was also fundamentally a man of peace. This was not passive pacifism, but active peacemaking. He understood that peace was not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, understanding, and mutual respect. His philosophy of peace was captured in his words: "We are going to ensure that there is peace before, during, and after the elections. Because when there is no peace, it's not the elites who will suffer. It's the ordinary people who have elected us into office." When we were students, Prof told my class, this was the peacemaker, that as far as possible, we should make sure we're not the reason for anyone losing their job. Many of my classmates remember this question. We can't remember what we were talking about. Later in my public life, trying to be the good mentee, I applied this advice to my own significant harm. But the good thing was, Prof was right. There was peace because I took the path of peace. So, peaceful Prof still wins the day. But there's also another story one of the students told me that showed me that although it was good that Prof was peaceful, Prof would have been a very poor litigation lawyer. So, Commonwealth boys went on a poster and misbehaved very badly. In their words, they disciplined a particular student. So the head of their JCR was in trouble, and the student who had been disciplined was a relative of Prof Mills and went to hire Prof as his lawyer. Prof calls the dean of students and says he wants to see the Commonwealth president and asked him that, "Were you people went to do ABC?" And he said, "Yes." Prof said, "Let me advise you. Go quickly to the student who was disciplined and go and beg and make peace. Because I know it was a prank that went too far, but if it goes to court, you guys can be in a lot of trouble." The guy quickly sneaked there. He didn't even tell Prof that he was also the chief choir master. And he went and he apologized and made peace, and that's how the matter died. So most litigation lawyers would know that this is not the path to making money, but that was Prof. But Prof's character was also shaped. He loved sports, everyone knew this, particularly hockey. He played for the Ghana national hockey team, and he learned valuable lessons about teamwork, discipline, and fair play. The values from the hockey field, working together toward common goals, respecting teammates and opponents, understanding who gets into his car. The first ones to arrive gets the lift. And that was Prof. Always fair, even in the little decisions. He had, as an educator, came through his mentorship relationships with individual students. Prof had an extraordinary ability to identify potential in young people and to nurture that potential through guidance and courage-guided work. Through Prof's support, one of my classmates ended up at Prof's alma mater, the London School of Economics, for his LLM. And Prof helped him to get his first job at the Ghana Stock Exchange when he came back home. And for all the students, Prof did not have to know where we came from, who our parents were, he just helped. Prof was always accessible to his students. When I was at Queen's University in Canada, I worked in the library. And one time they were throwing away all the books where they had additional copies. So I asked them, what were they going to do with the books? They said they were going to be trashed. And I said, oh, could I have them for the law faculty? And they said yes. So I ended up with 48 boxes of books in my apartment. Now, I didn't know how these books were going to get to Ghana. Every week, my landlord would come and look at the boxes and ask me when the boxes were moving. Eventually, I think Prof was at the IRS at the time. I managed to get a message to Prof that I was about to be kicked out of my apartment with 48 boxes of law books. Prof immediately called the High Commissioner. They sent a van and they picked these 48 boxes of books before my landlord kicked me and the books onto the streets of Kingston, Ontario. That was Prof, always accessible. Beyond all this, Prof quoted words. I have always said that I will be a president for all Ghanaians, whether they voted for me or not, and without consideration for which part of the country they come from. It was not political rhetoric. It was a governing philosophy that shaped every aspect of his administration. Mills understood that Ghana's diversity, ethnic, regional, religious, gender, and generational, was a source of strength, not division. But only if that diversity was properly harnessed and included in the governance process. Economic stewardship is also worthy of mention. Prof inherited an economy facing significant challenges, including the global financial crisis of 2008-2009. His response demonstrated both his intellectual rigor and his commitment to evidence-based policymaking. Rather than relying on ideological prescriptions, Mills and his team carefully analyzed Ghana's economic situation and developed targeted interventions. One of the most significant developments during his presidency was the beginning of large-scale oil production in Ghana in December 2010. This presented both enormous opportunities and significant risks. Mills approached this challenge with characteristic thoughtfulness, working to ensure that all revenues would be used for long-term development rather than short-term consumption. Mills' presidency played a crucial role in consolidating Ghana's democracy. His commitment to democratic principles was evident in his respect for the rule of law and his tolerance of dissent and criticism. Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General, said of Prof, Ghanaians must extol the late president because his reign transformed the country as a model of investment possibilities. It cemented political stability, and while presiding over Ghana's first production of oil, he accelerated economic growth for the benefit of this fine West African country. Mills's presidency also marked Ghana's emergence as a respected voice in international affairs. His approach to foreign policy was rooted in his understanding of Ghana's role as a beacon of democracy and stability in Africa. He sought to use Ghana's influence to promote peace, democracy, and development throughout the continent. The President's international engagements reflected his intellectual approach to leadership. He was comfortable discussing complex policy issues with world leaders, bringing to these discussions a deep understanding of both African realities and global trends. How did I know all this? Oh, at some point, early in his presidency, I received a call. A gentleman called Ambassador Baita said he had been sent by the President to come and see me. I was like, okay. Ambassador Baita comes, and the first thing he says, are you related to Prof? No. How do you know Prof? I was his student. I said, okay. Prof says I should inform you that he wants you to start writing his speeches. Okay. Now he says, I want to see samples of your writing. So I gave him samples of my writing. I think they did their background check, and then he now calls me and he says, Mr. Bebakumensa wants to see me. So I go to the castle to see Uncle Bebs, and he tells me how they will engage. These are the times when we meet to lecture, the speech will call you, will write, what do you need to do it? And I said I was fine, I didn't need anything. So that's how I started writing 12 speeches under the supervision of Honorable Kofi Tutubi Bakshi. When Prof requested a speech, I would write and I would send it to Uncle KTK, who would look at it and say, hey, there's no politics in this speech. He would infuse it with politics. Prof's presidency ended tragically because it was his final day to build the better Ghana he had promised. Prof's death was not just the loss of a president, but the loss of a teacher, a mentor, and a father figure to millions of Ghanaians. The circumstances of his death, dying in office while serving his people, provided a final testament to his character and commitment. He could have stepped down when his health began to fail, but he chose to continue serving until the end. This was not stubbornness or ego, but a deep sense of responsibility to the people who had entrusted him with leadership. Prof's peaceful succession by his Vice President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, demonstrated the strength of Ghana's democratic institutions and the wisdom of Prof's approach to governance. The smooth transition was a tribute to the democratic culture that Mills had helped to nurture and strengthen. Although his presidency was tragically cut short, it left an indelible mark on Ghana and its people. His legacy as president can be measured in many ways. The peaceful elections, the young leaders he empowered, the institutions he strengthened, and perhaps his greatest legacy as president was his demonstration that leadership could be both effective and ethical, both strong and humble, and both visionary and practical. Prof was not a saint. Like all humans, he had his shortcomings. But we are the better for his having been here. Prof left his family, his students, his mentees. We are grateful. As I reflect on the life and legacy of Professor John Banzer, I am acutely aware that I speak not just as an observer of history, but a student, to speechwriter, to my appointment as chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, and to the ongoing influence of his teachings on my life and work. I remember when Prof died, one of my colleagues at the NCC told me at the meeting that, as for you, everybody knows your godfather has died. So I think at that point, they all recognized that I was now an orphan. But the journey from student to mentee to public servant was not one I had planned or even imagined when I first entered this classroom. But Prof saw something in me that I had not yet seen in myself. This was his gift, the ability to recognize potential and to nurture it with patience, wisdom, and unwavering support. What made Prof. Mills such an effective mentor was his ability to balance guidance with independence. He provided direction when I needed it, but he also encouraged me to think for myself and to develop my own perspectives and approaches. His mentorship was characterized by several key qualities. His accessibility. Despite his busy schedule and growing responsibilities, Prof. always made time for his students and mentees. Even as vice president, I remember being at a funeral where Prof. saw me and sent someone to drag me over to inquire why I had not come to see him at the castle. Many of my colleagues received similar messages, and we used to ask ourselves whether Prof. really knew how hard it was to get into the castle. But he would send those messages. Authenticity. Prof. was very genuine in his interactions with his mentees. He did not put on airs or try to impress us with his knowledge or position. He was simply himself, wise, caring, and committed to our success. Prof. understood that growth and development take time. He was patient with our mistakes and supportive of our efforts to learn and improve. While supportive, he was not permissive. He was very firm, but he challenged us to think more deeply, to work harder, and to aspire higher. And then he created opportunities for his mentees. He opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed, and he provided platforms for us to demonstrate our capabilities. When Prof. offered me the position of chair of the NCC, I was both honored and terrified. There was no excuse I did not come up with in my attempt to decline the role. And Prof's only response was, if we all don't do it, what will become of Ghana?